Welcome everybody to what I think is the first formal interface between the whole music ecology and our prospective representatives in city government. I'm Mara McLaughlin. I'm Executive Director of MusicPortland, and we are the grassroots nonprofit trade organization that represents the entire music ecology here in Portland. It's all music businesses, all venues, all performing and recording artists, studios, labels, bookers. We've got hundreds of music businesses here in this city. I'm going to make a brief statement to give some context for the audience and to frame our aspirations for this event. Portland's for-profit music industry has been an economic and cultural juggernaut for years. It delivers enormous benefits to our city. With its fiercely DIY culture and independent spirit, for all of this time it's existed, there has been no explicit support from city government. And partly this is because there's been no available intelligence about the industry as a whole to inform policy decisions. So collecting this data has been a primary mission of MusicPortland since 2018. Many people are surprised to learn that our local music industry generates more than $1 billion in direct revenue each year from ticket sales, instrument and gear manufacturing, distribution, music production, record labels, and more. Combine that with the exponentially greater indirect revenue, where $12 on average is paid for drinks and food for every $1 spent on a ticket. And finally, consider the confirmed influence that our music scene has as an economic multiplier on music tourism and corporate recruitment. There are an estimated 40,000 Portlanders who make some or all of their income as in professional music activities. So live performance is the linchpin of this economy. In the current crisis, local venues were the first to shut down, and they're going to be the last to reopen. Without performance income, musicians can't pay for goods and services provided by the more than 700 businesses that are located here. From a civic perspective, venues are like the Grange halls of our Oregon past. They provide critical community gathering spaces to support nonprofits and personal events and a multitude of other non-musical community activities. If the venues are not sustained, the path for the industry and our city as a whole is bleak. So successful music cities take three specific things. 1, industry solidarity and leadership. 2, engaged fan base. And 3, supportive city government. So we're lucky as a city to have multiple music organizations uniting and championing different aspects of our industry. MusicPortland works closely and collaboratively with the Musicians Union, with the Independent Venue Coalition, with the Oregon Media Production Alliance, and others. As for fans, our nearly 1,200 promoted live music shows every month exist because we have the audiences keep coming. We've been ranked by Bands in Town as the second most engaged fan base in the country. And Portlanders have a limitless capacity for information and stories about our local music scene. We've got 5 independent radio stations that heavily feature local music. We've got a quarterly full-color print magazine solely about local music and musicians in Vortex magazine. Our music industry powers our free press. Willie Week and Mercury are mostly supported by music promotions and not coincidentally, were critically wounded when the venues closed. So we've got industry leadership, we've got residents and local employers who are deeply committed to our local music scene. And what the moment now demands is an integrated and strategic leadership from City Hall. What will Portland look like if we allow our music culture to fade away? So even before the shutdown, the music industry was already challenged by Portland's rapid growth and rising prices and residential infill. And while we work cooperatively with RAC, that organization was designed to support nonprofit arts and music economies, and they have neither the capacity nor the structure to effectively serve the commercial music industry. The simple fact is that Portland's music industry has earned its own seat at the city's table, not as an afterthought sort of combined in with arts and culture. It's different. It's a commercial production art that's more like film than it is like theater or dance. So we're looking for leadership that will partner with the industry to craft new and creative ways to reinvent us into a sustainable music city. Of course, there are going to be hard choices and priorities competing for attention and resources in the year to come. Leadership in the next term will be measured by what's left of Portland when the crisis is over. What makes Portland, Portland? The mountain is still going to be there, but our music culture will not survive without explicit strategy and investment. So today, we hope to hear from each candidate about their curiosity, their creativity, and their commitment to this large and complex music ecology. We are absolutely grateful for your participation as we throw a whole new industry to consider into complicated times. But for the music professionals that are listening, we hope that from this event and the other candidate submissions we'll be posting, that you make informed election choices that will define our city government going forward. Your vote on May 19th will directly impact your long-term viability as a music professional in Portland. This is important, and as much as we're asking of the candidates, we're asking even more from the music community to get involved, be part of the democratic process, and help us rebuild our city. And now it's time for y'all to face the music. So first up, we have position 1, and we're going to be hearing first from Carmen Rubio.
Great. Thank you so much, Mira, and thank you so much to MusicPortland for hosting this very important forum. My name is Carmen Rubio. Okay. Thank you. My name is Carmen Rubio, and I'm a candidate for City Council position 1. And I'm running because I believe that our city government should be accessible and represent all of us in Portland, not just those that have had traditionally or historic access or power. And much of my life has been influenced by music. I come from a hardworking family that came to this community for looking for a better life and better opportunities. And both sides of my family have roots in Mexico, Texas, and New Mexico before migrating west and eventually settling in North Plains, Oregon. And my grandparents and my parents instilled strong values about taking care of one another, respect for one another, but also the joy in celebrating our cultural heritage. And much of that we did through music. And as a child, I have really vivid memories of waking up to the smell of hot tortillas being made by my mom, and also coffee. And then the sounds of Little Joe y La Familia, Ramon Ayala, Vicente Fernandez, and Selena blasting on the radio. And also I have another very vivid memory, dancing with a small gaggle of other little children in front of my dad's band at various community functions, music venues, and celebrations. My father was a musician. In Artesia, New Mexico, he played the saxophone in a marching band. And then after school, he played both the sax and the drums in numerous bands. And this is a picture of one of his bands that I found. He's on the sax right here in New Mexico. The band was called The Hereafter in 1979. He still can't explain that name. But anyway, they played rock and roll and Tex-Mex music. And his love of music continued when he and his whole family migrated to Oregon. And he continued playing in bands, playing quinceañeras, weddings, celebrations for years in the Hillsborough area. Here's another one. Interesting collars. He's the one in the black collar right there. And also for more than 24 years, my dad and my uncle and Andy were Spanish radio DJs, and every weekend on 1360 KUIK radio in Hillsborough, they used to play a show, the only Spanish show for a good while of time in those early years. He's retired now. He's moved back to El Paso, where he's he's in Tex-Mex heaven right now. But after, myself, after multiple tries on the saxophone, flute, piano, it became pretty apparent that I wasn't as musically gifted as my father, but I did have some success in the bell choir though, although not very popular. But regardless, the value that stuck with me is that music helps bring people together, and it also shapes our lives. And we all have stories like these, and we need music to thrive. But there's a lack of education about and appreciation for this industry and what it takes to produce musical experiences, and how our musicians and industry folks are getting left behind. And in this pandemic, the greater public is just barely understanding how essential retail workers and food workers are, and that they're the lifeblood of our food supply right now. And I recognize that this is the same dynamic in your industry. The shock and fear will set in when our leaders and community realize too late that Portland's lifeblood, culturally, our music industry, doesn't bounce back to what it once was in the post-COVID economy. And we can change this. In this crisis, we have opportunities to push for changes and take positive risks for equity. And from what I'm learning, your industry has long been deprived of the attention, the appreciation, and equitable service from our city government. Portland won't be what we are today without our reputation as a music city. And in a post-COVID recovery, we need to ensure that we are investing in keeping and retaining the essential parts of our economy that make Portland, Portland, as someone said earlier. And as a driver of tourism, as an economic engine for our free press, and also the #1 way that Portlanders come together. The music industry must be at the table to make this happen. And as someone who has been profoundly shaped by music and musicians in my life, I'm eager to learn more about this history, about the music economy in this city, and finding solutions to ensure that this industry thrives. And I'm equally eager to be your champion in City Hall. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Ambush, I think you have a question for herself.
Let me go ahead and unmute. Everyone hear me nice and clearly?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so thank you everyone, first off, for joining us this afternoon. Thank you so much for taking the time out. So Portland did not specifically consider the needs of the music industry when it crafted its regulation and permitting requirements. Some, through failure to understand the unique nature of music businesses, make business nearly impossible. Would you prioritize a collaborative effort between the new Music Portland Policy Council to review, rationalize, and streamline all intersections of city regulations and music? And do you have any experiences that might demonstrate your capacity for this?
Yeah, so reading the backgrounder was very, very eye-opening, and it makes me really want to dive in and learn more. And first I'll say that navigating permitting and regulatory challenges are felt across multiple sectors, and expressly like the housing one right now is the most recent one that we saw. And ultimately I'll start by saying what we need is form of government change. We need to restructure our government so that people who live and do business in our city can successfully navigate systems, advocate, and also directly meet with elected leaders and bureau leaders who will bring focus on that particular issue or project, and do so with expediency, because we know that for businesses and venues, time is money. And that's why I'm in favor of a city council and city manager change with commissioners elected by district so that we get that focus. Next thing, so many of the challenges that are articulated are very similar, with some identical issues to that of the film industry that they had when they were when I was in a policy staff in Mayor Potter's office. And these issues were raised through strong advocacy from the film community and led to the development of the Portland Film Office, which now has become institutionalized at the city. And this office acts as a gateway and a streamline for film projects, reviews policy, permitting, and a host of other supports that create partnerships among the city and the industry. And as a result, you all know, we saw a floodgate of movies and TV projects. We need this. We need to establish an office that can streamline permits, that can engage community stakeholders, the music industry stakeholders, highlight redundancies, and also be a convener around critical issues or potential opportunities. It will need dedicated industry knowledgeable staff, and that can help navigate the city permitting processes and issues and cut the time down. So we've already done this before. We have a template and a track record, and we can learn from what worked and what didn't in its design. And I'd be very excited to champion that.
All right, sounds good. We look forward to working with you.
Yeah, next up,
over at the Music Policy Forum.
Oh, there we go. Yes. Ambush is the chair of the Music Policy Forum, as well as an executive with the Numbers, which is a new station within the X-Ray family.
Great.
Next up, we have Candace Avalos, who please give us your statement.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Candace Avalos. I am a Portland State educator currently. So I have been an educator for 10 years. And preparing for this forum, I really dived back into my personal history to see where music has played a role in my life. So if you want to go way, way back to 5th grade, where I was getting ready for middle school and being told to, pick an instrument to play, and I wanted to play the drums. But, in Northern Virginia, they were like, girls don't play drums, so you play the flute. So I was like, really? So I did grow up playing the flute in middle school. I did marching band in 9th grade. But then I found a way around not being able to play musical drums, and I played something that I like to call body drums, which is I was a step team dancer. So I did that all through high school, and that was kind of my way to get my drum fix that I was looking for. You make, for people that are not familiar, you make different sounds with your body and how you hit your hands, hit your legs. So that was a big part of my life growing up and how music influenced me. And then, so don't laugh, my first concert ever was Fall Out Boy back in the summer of 2006. I was working at a movie theater at the time, and I had some friends that liked to go to concerts, and they brought me in and got to see All American Rejects and October Falls, and this was like summer of 06. But then I really got into the music scene, and again, I grew up in Northern Virginia, so right outside of Washington, D.C. So I went to a lot of shows at the 930 Club, for those that are familiar, also the Black Cat, 2 really big spots in D.C. I remember waiting all day, 12 hours, so I could see Silverchair in the very front row. And my favorite concert I went to at the 930 Club was Gogo Bordello, because it's way fun and you just get to dance around. And then also, when I came out to Portland, the very first concert I went to was at the Doug Fir, and I got to see Lake Street Dive. So I didn't realize, living in Virginia, I was actually looking at Lake Street Dive videos from Pickathon, and I didn't make the connection until I got here that was where, that culture of music really thrived here in Portland. And so I've been blessed to be able to see lots of local artists actually working at PSU. Our students, they do a really great live at lunch every Tuesday, Thursday, and bring in local artists to perform. And then also, I've got lots of friends that are in the music business here in Portland. I've got some CrossFit friends that one is the lead singer of the Suicide Notes. My friend Jesse, another friend is the drummer for the Hair Puller. And then actually my boyfriend, Eric Rigeline, he has been a musician and drummer in Portland for 25 years. So he was a drummer in the band In Hope of Solace, if anyone knows, wants a throwback and remembers In Hope of Solace. So of course, having him in my home, I was like, I need to know what this looks like. What does the music scene need from Portland City Council? So some of the things that, he shared with me that I thought was good perspective, he talked about noise complaints. He said that it's really unfair that many people are okay with noise, and then there's just that one neighbor that can shut down a whole operation. So he talked about how there really needs to be better regulations on noise complaints to ensure that people can play their music. He also talked about there's too much money being subsidized for things like the opera and the symphony, and not enough for our local music ecology, which is exactly what this forum is about, to talk about how it's a huge part of Portland's culture and it's really important to our community. So, and then I said, well, what is it that you need from City Hall? And he said, money. And I was like, okay, be more specific. So he told me that money in the way of not only that subsidizing, but also investment in local music venues. Also having more rental spaces available in Portland. I know he was in this one band, but he was going all the way to Beaverton. That was around when I first met him, and because there was not a lot of space in Portland, so there needs to be more rehearsal spaces here. And also that local businesses are fair in their pay of musicians when they're doing gigs in their spaces. So I'd really like to see the musician union, Local 99, have more of a space at the table as well. We often talk about unions, and they're a big part of Portland culture, but I don't see that union given a priority or a space to speak in Portland City Hall about how that affects our culture and our community. So overall, I think that, like has been said, and I really appreciate Mira's introduction to give some good context of what this means and why people are logging in and tuning in today to hear about how Portland City Councils are going to make space for music in the future, especially in the post-COVID-19 recovery. I think that it's going to play a huge role in our, we're kind of going through this collective trauma, honestly. and it's emotional. And music is the way that we talk about our emotions, and it's the way that we come together as people. And so I think that I'd really like to see that community being prioritized more in the post-COVID-19 recovery. And I strongly support expanding the Portland Film Office into an Office of Film and Music. That I saw that in the backgrounder, and I'm actually surprised to hear that there isn't dedicated staff for music, especially since this is a music town. So I'm in support of these reforms, and I would love to be a good partner in City Hall for music. So thank you.
Excellent. Shout out to everyone that is participating on Facebook and putting questions in the chat, and also those on Zoom doing the same. Thank you so much. We are documenting, we are pulling those questions in, and look forward to posing some of those questions. So for the question I do have for you, Candace, Portland's private sector is confirmed as relying heavily on our local music scene to attract and retain talent. And for that reason, significant influence on decisions to locate businesses in Portland. How would you engage local businesses to invest in local music that directly benefits them? As a city commissioner, what role would you be willing to play to make that happen?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. And I think I alluded to parts of the answer in my intro when I was talking about how local and private businesses need to do a better job of supporting musicians in the area of fair pay and wages. That's one thing that I heard a lot from people that I've talked to in the music world. And I think that, ultimately leadership is really important in creating the partnerships between these entities. And that's why we're here to talk about how we can be those leaders to build those bridges between these, local business and the music industry. So I think that I read also about agent of change principles, and I think that is something I want to explore a lot more about. What is the, sharing or making sure that these businesses, when they're expanding when we're expanding as a city, that they're taking into account local or music venues, and making sure that they're, having, I know in the agent of change brief that you gave me, it was about sound mitigation on the entities that they're building, and making sure that they're protecting these venues that have a historic role in the city. And again, I want to echo what I said earlier about the musicians union, Local 99, having more of a role in these conversations as well. So I feel like I could be a commissioner that can bring together these communities, and I would like to do that by being an advocate for music. And like I said, it's been really good to hear perspective from obviously my partner, but then also other musicians that I know in Portland, and how they feel not supported. And I totally hear the frustration when they talk to me about that. So I'm really excited to be included in this and to have this top of mind, because I want to see us have more leadership in City Hall for music.
Thank you so much, Candace.
Thank you.
All right, so now we get to, I believe, select some questions from the audience that have been submitted, and ask all three candidates which of them might like to answer or speak to briefly any of these.
Okay, let's see. Even when the economy is thriving, artists are used to being asked to give away their work for free. How would you ensure that a successful music industry doesn't stop with the business owners? Would you support a prevailing wage for musicians? We still need to bring in Tim.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. That was my mistake. Tim.
Okay.
Oh, first timers. Okay. Now it's time.
We'll run the question back later.
Yeah,
exactly.
My apologies, Tim.
I didn't know the exact format, so I thought maybe it was going to go back and forth, so I didn't say anything. All right, so I can introduce myself?
Yes, please.
All right, thanks. Thanks as well for allowing us all to be here. My name is Tim DuBois. I'm running for position 1, city council. Music, when I was very young, wasn't a big part of my life, but it became an increasing part of my life when actually religion was also a part of my life. I played bells in church in 4th and 5th grade and began to listen to Christian pop regularly. My next phase was enjoying pop music, think kind of Ace of Base when I was a regular at the roller rink in my hometown in Michigan. I was learning to play the trumpet as well in middle school band, and an instrument I played straight to graduation. Somewhere in middle school, a man named, calling himself Hootie, said he only wanted to be with me. I don't think he meant me. And another band informed me that Superman was dead. At that point, rock music became my music. I later bought a bass. Remember playing Green Day song at the middle school talent contest. I was not that good, even on easy songs like that. However, I did move on to playing jazz band in high school. Playing bass taught me an important lesson. That is that I have no rhythm. I remember very clearly a song that was meant to play in andante at around 84 beats per minute. By the time the teacher stopped the song and began to, well, yell at me, the speed had picked up to a moderato pace at around 116 beats per minute. Yeah, he yelled at me, "Why, Tim, are you speeding up?" "Sir, I'm following the drummer." A lesson for any budding bass player: never say that. I continued to try and play music after graduation, but it was really not my forte. What I discovered is that I really enjoy listening to and experiencing music through live shows. I began making regular trips to Chicago and Detroit to see my favorite acts. Although Pearl Jam was and remains my favorite band, I've been a fan club member for over 20 years now. I began to see the difference between commercially successful bands and those that had to work hard. I would only see Pearl Jam once every 2 or 3 years. In 1 year, I saw a band called Thursday 7 times. I loved music so much. It's part of the reason I moved to Chicago. I wanted to be closer to the music. There was not much of a music scene in a small town in Michigan. And so I moved a few blocks from my favorite venue, the Metro. I don't know if any of your people have played there. Initially, I loved being up front in the action at shows until an AFI show in Chicago. This is the funny story. The pit was so packed I could pick up my feet and not touch the ground. Unfortunately, my shorts button snapped and my shorts fell down and I could not pick them up. I managed to eventually get out and have, for the most part, stayed back at shows moving forward. Only recently realizing that it's gotten really embarrassingly bad and that I went and saw Pinback. I apologize, I forget the venue. And I sat on the chairs up in the bleachers. So I sort of have a different relationship with music now. I still buy music regularly and enjoy the occasional show. But now I like seeing live salsa bands when I go salsa dancing with my wife. And I go to musicals, and I know that might be a different segment, but there's musicians there and some of them. So now, where does the policy come into this? I can actually tie it back to a Pearl Jam show. I was recently at the home show up in Seattle, and it was a benefit for new housing, try to solve some of the homeless problem. And they took a moment to derive the closing or the potential closing and sale of the showbox. And I'm sort of a real estate and housing policy wonk. And I sat there, I'm like, well, they're going to replace it with housing. So that's kind of ironic. So I talked to a person I know in Seattle and tried to figure out what was going on there. Why was it closing? And he's also a land use advocate there, and he said there wasn't really any answers. And so some of the sort of the questions we asked were, is it just a business problem? Or are they just not getting the acts to stay in business? Is there some sort of new regulation on music venues that they just can't comply with, and that can pose a risk as well? So there really is a policy discussion that needs to be had. Another policy that can help save a place like that is to sell off the development rights. So that's, you know, if a 20, 30, 40 story tower can go there, if it's only one story, they can sell that 39 stories to other developers, and they get, maybe they can overcome whatever financial bump that they are currently facing. So there's a lot of interesting things to kind of discuss when we think about why venues may close or not close, and city council should be making sure that they're, you know, certainly there's a balance, but as a music fan myself, I think that positioning myself on that end is very natural. So what are other things? You know, I think about the arts tax. My son is a first grader, and his teacher is paid, a music teacher that is her salary is paid for by the arts tax. And so that's something I really support. I think getting kids excited about music, especially at a really young age, is really, it's fantastic. It broadens their experiences in school and teaches them a lot of things that the traditional reading, writing, math don't provide.
Hey, Tim, we're going to kind of have to bring that to a close.
Sure.
Okay.
Wasn't there supposed to be a ding or a warning?
I thought I saw something on my side that said we were kind of
Okay.
close there.
Yeah. Well, I'm just about the end, so I apologize. I don't like to be the
No.
person who talks too much. I normally don't. I'm just so excited about music. I'm analog, by the way. Yeah. Okay. So.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, I'll finish it up. I apologize. So yeah, music connects us all. You know, it helps when we're feeling down, amplifies the good times, and it is so much more than an industry. It's sort of a time marker. How many people here can hear a specific song and be placed into a certain moment in time? Cities can support the music industry, and I intend to do so as well. I apologize for just traveling on. Yeah.
No problem at all. No problem.
Thank you.
So I'm going to hit you with the question that we had for you.
Sure.
As a key industry, valuable cultural asset, and major feature of our city brand, will you support giving our music industry a seat at the table in City Hall? How will you ensure that the unique needs of the music industry are reflected in city planning processes, development conversations, land use policies, and other major economic or cultural decisions?
Yeah, of course. Music should absolutely be represented at the table in City Hall regarding especially things that are land use. It's very complicated. You know, when we think about new housing, typically it's smaller, a lot more density, and that makes it very difficult to be able to practice music. You know, the traditional garage band is increasingly less. So there needs to be sort of a balance of making sure that we are permitting studio space. I know a friend who's a drummer, and you know, he can't have drums in his apartment, but rents some studio space off of Powell. And so I think there's a lot of room for that. Yeah.
All right.
So
at this
now
time,
we
we're
have
gonna-
the, oh,
Go
sorry, go ahead. Take it away, Ambush.
So at this time, we can go back to the question from the forum, correct?
Yes,
You
go
can
to
ask
the
them. All right.
audience questions. And why
Go
don't you
back.
ask Candace one first? We can ask one per person just to streamline it.
Okay. I know how much time we have. Excellent. All right. Candace, let me see what we have here. All right. There's a lot of talk about how music tourism benefits our local economy. But what can we do to make sure that this tourism isn't pricing artists out of living in the city?
That's a great question. And I think that, you know, again, I have a lot of artist friends, not just musicians, but also people who make art. And, you know, this is the city for that. And it's really not okay that people that are contributing to the lively culture that we are so proud of can't afford to live and work and create art in this city. So, I mean, I think that it ties to a lot of other, you know, we can go down the route of just affordable housing and how we're, you know, developing housing that's not only built affordably, but also that is going to have mixed income. And also we have to talk about bringing people up, bringing their wages up. So it's multifaceted. And so I know that I can't answer all of that in the 1 minute I probably have. But I think that the Office of Music is going to be really important. And I really strongly support that. I appreciated you all kind of putting me in the loop about the role that that could play in addressing these needs. And I think that that's a good start, to have dedicated staff that are seeing that bigger picture and are being collaborative with the different offices. I also strongly support the change of the form of government. That is why I decided to run, because I believe that that is at the root of so many of the problems and how we're collaborative. So Office of Music, I think, would be a really important first step.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, Carmen, you are up next. What will you do to change the confusing and illogical, described illogical, OLC rules pertaining to underage attendance of cultural events, specifically musical events?
So what I would do, the first thing I would do was I need to be effective is to really educate myself about this issue. So I would really want to first meet with music industry folks to really understand what the history of the problem is,
Okay.
what are some key examples where things worked well, and where are some places where it went horribly wrong. And then really start from there. Then we pull in the stakeholders and policymakers to present some options and solutions about how to navigate that. I also think that the film office, if we decide to expand it, or we decide to create our own music industry office, whatever this dedicated staff is, could be essential as a convener, not just when things go wrong, but ongoing and in a preventative way, but also a way that is proactively seeking out solutions and providing new opportunities. We can't just react when something bad happens. It's not good for the industry, and it unfairly creates bias against the industry and puts the onus on the venues as the sole agents responsible for some of these incidents. When we have to reconfigure, that's a policy issue, that's a city issue. We all own a part of that because we all benefit from that. So that's where I would start and figure out and how to lift that up. But admittedly, I have a lot to learn, and that means that I'm in a great position to come in and be fresh and open to new ideas.
All right. I hope you guys are hearing this. Your questions are being answered. So, Tim, I'm going to restate the question I started out your segment with. Even when the economy is thriving, artists are used to being asked to give away their work for free. How would you ensure that a successful music industry doesn't stop with the business owners? Would you support a prevailing wage for musicians?
So personally, I would support a prevailing wage for musicians. I think it's incredibly important that they earn a living, that they can live in the city that they play in. I don't know, and I would be very interested in finding out how exactly City Council can facilitate that, and I'd be willing to listen and support that. I think it is incredibly important that, especially given that the musicians themselves generate the content that they share appropriately and fairly in the economic impact of that creation. So yeah, I'd be all ears. Just as Carmen and Candace have said, we all need to learn a little bit more, and would be willing to have you at the table and excited to have you at the table, and the same is definitely true with me.
Amazing. All
right. I think we're ready to move on to position number 2. And the first candidate up for her statement is Julia DeGraw.
All right. Excuse me. All right, I hope you can all hear me. Again, my name is Julia DeGraw. I'm running for Portland City Council position 2. I ran for this seat 2 years ago, so it might sound a little bit familiar to some of you. I really appreciate that this event has been organized. At first, when I got the email, I got a little sense of dread of like, oh my gosh, this is a whole new issue area that I hadn't thought about as like a totally standalone issue area, right? And then as I read your backgrounder and did some research, I realized that this is something that I personally really deeply resonate with and relate to, and I'm really eager to work with Portland's independent music communities to make sure they're getting the support and the holistic policy-making, programmatic, decisions and supports from the public sector that have been missing for decades. And I'm frankly shocked, having grown up in this area and spent my 20s going to shows all over Portland and really enjoying that there was always something at a price point that I could afford down to free, that it hasn't been supported by the city more. It was a totally eye-opening experience for me to realize that that's something that's been lacking for so long. In terms of my personal experience with music, I grew up playing the piano. My brother played the violin, and I decided, I guess, for some reason at a very young age that I wanted to play an instrument that wasn't mobile, which I frankly regret. My brother can carry his violin wherever he goes. Like, I should pick guitar, but anyway. I played piano all the way through college. I sang in choirs all the way to adulthood. I actually really enjoy the fact that it just shifts your brain into a totally different space. You can't think about work. You can't think about stuff you're stressed out about when you're singing. You're just trying to blend your voice with everyone else's voice. And it just transports you into like a very present, in the moment place. And I really love that about music and about actually creating it and participating in it in that way. My brother is a DJ. He's really into electronica. My cousin does that as well. They do it for fun. They used to do a college radio show back when they were in school. And I have a lot of friends who are in bands, and I really, and they run the gamut from folks who try to scrape together an actual living making music, which is a huge struggle, to folks who have really good day jobs and play highly professional music at venues across the city. And something that always blows my mind about musicians is I spent my entire career as an organizer in the nonprofit sector. One of the major campaigns that I worked on was a campaign to keep a Nestle water bottling facility out of the Columbia River Gorge. And a bunch of bands came to me, bands would come to me and say, hey, we wrote this song to support your effort, and we really want to do a fundraiser event for this campaign. And Mississippi Studios hosted a fundraising event with Cedra Willie, this amazing bluegrass band, to help raise funds for our campaign. And they wrote an original song where they rewrote the lyrics to Roll On Columbia, to a protest song to protect the gorge. And I was just amazed at that level of generosity, because those were professional musicians who were making a living on their music, giving something to us at a, we split the door, but still they did not make the amount of money they would have made had they not been generous and donating to a cause. So the music community has given so much to our city. And the fact that all the money being made in the local community, the music community is largely staying local, is huge as well. I don't want to see, the demise of this industry lead to private or more corporate, replacements, and this is true of the small business community in Portland as well. We're defined by our local music. We're defined by our small local businesses. And we have to make sure as we go through this crisis and begin to recover from it, that we're doing everything we can to support them, which is why I definitely support staffing and creating an office that's solely for supporting this community, getting to prevailing wages. $22 an hour is really what a living wage is in Portland at this point. That needs to be what we talk about when we talk about a living wage. $15 an hour isn't going to cut it these days. I'm really glad to see that you've gotten organized, that you have data now. We can't make good decisions without data. I'm a huge fan of data-driven decision making. So I really appreciate that, that right now at this moment, it seems like that all parties can be poised to move forward with a renewed commitment to work together and making sure that our local music ecology is better supported throughout this crisis and as we recover, because as much as this crisis is indeed a crisis, it's also an opportunity to dramatically change how we currently support people, and then maintain those changes in how we support people moving forward, right? We should have been supporting the local music industry long before this crisis, but if this crisis is the impetus to create those structures and to create the place where we can have these conversations and create these public-private partnerships, then let's take advantage of that and build this into the structure of our city moving forward. When I ran in 2018, I ran on a system change platform Part of the reason why we had to change our system is because it is impossible to navigate the city's permitting process for building a house, for opening a business, for music venues, apparently, right? Like there's not a single thing that is streamlined and easy in the existing system that we have. So I'm deeply committed to system change and creating more one-stop shop locations for people who want to build affordable housing, for people who want to participate in our music culture, and for people who want to participate in the different, in opening small business. We need to streamline all these permitting processes in order to make them accessible to the small local businesses and artists and venue owners who make Portland, Portland. And I think I might be at time. I don't know. Did I?
You're right at it. You're right.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. But yeah,
Okay.
I really look forward to partnering with the music community in the city of Portland to do better moving forward.
Okay. All right. So, question specifically for you. Portland's rapid growth and residential infill strategy has already displaced or continue to threaten music businesses and venues. Would you be supportive of enacting an agent of change principles into city building codes, which would require developers to pay for mitigation, protect pre-existing music venues?
Yes, I recently did a questionnaire, and I promise I'm going to connect these things. They're going to seem disproportionate, but they make sense.
Okay.
I just recently did a questionnaire where we were talking about the tree code in Portland, where developers and industry need to take into account the tree and the green infrastructure within our city as though it's as valuable as built infrastructure, because it is. Trees create habitat, they clean the air, they make neighborhoods more livable. We absolutely should be approaching music venues with the same level of if not more, frankly, we need to improve our tree protections, but we need to be supporting protection of our existing music venues in very much the same way. Quality of life in the city of Portland has been defined by our independent music scene. And obviously we're growing, and we're not going to stop growing. We have to define how we do it though. And we can do both things. We can grow, and we can build more densely, and we can protect our local music venues. We can do all of that at the same time, but it requires making these policies that will, at the very least, if a venue is going to be lost, we need to be made whole there. They need to make a new venue as they do new construction, right? There needs to be, at the very least, mitigation, but preferential. The preference should be to find ways to protect the existing venues. So I'm absolutely committed to creating that kind of policy. And again, I'm frankly disappointed. I can't say surprised, but disappointed that it hasn't been created yet.
Excellent. Next up, we have, lost my place. Whoops. Next up in the lineup, we have Sam Chase. Please make your statement, Sam.
Thank you. Yes, Sam Chase, running for Portland City Council. And I'll just share a little bit of background about me. I have spent most of my life working in the nonprofit and public service sector, building coalitions and building affordable housing and addressing poverty alleviation through affordable housing, healthcare, as the executive director for the Coalition of Community Health Clinics, and through job strategies, I led a coalition that reformed our urban renewal to stop the displacement policies that were underway and focus our efforts instead on serving the communities within those urban renewal areas. Was Nick Fish as chief of staff, and then and really did that because that was an opportunity to advance that work around poverty alleviation. And then I took that work to Metro, where I'm currently in my 8th year as Metro Councilor, and led the effort and championed the effort to get an affordable housing initiative, regional affordable housing initiative, on the ballot, the first regional initiative in the country, and to champion and win low-income transit fares. And it's that kind of coalition building that I want to bring to the city. And you know, I'd love to share a little bit about my experience with music, which is, you know, I grew up with a stepmother that was an opera singer, but I really didn't have a lot of opportunity to really engage in music, and really wished I had. I really enjoyed music a lot as a youth, and I just want to throw this in. My first concert was Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, the Gap Band, and Chuck Brown and the Soul Searchers, which was an absolutely amazing experience. And I have to give Candace a shout out on the 930 Club, because I would go and watch Trouble Funk and EU there, and it was absolutely fantastic.
Wow.
But later in life, I more recently, in the last 10 years or so, I really sort of moved away from listening over and over to the nostalgic music of the past, and really starting to spend a lot more time going to venues in Portland and exploring all our venues, and just going and seeing what bands had to offer. And it's just been an incredible experience for me. I've really enjoyed it. I have been able to sort of do what I felt like I didn't get when I was young, and get my children really involved in music. One of my daughters plays drums and plays a mean Pixies, Where's My Mind, and other songs. My other daughter has been in choir. I have one that's involved at Ethos Music right now with piano, and yes, Julia, learning guitar. He's starting to pick that up. And it's just been, and for me, music is, and one of the things I've worked throughout my life on is really understanding that our quality of life and advancing quality of life in our city is so important for the health of our economy and our residents. And music is such an important part of that. It provides the life of the city, and it helps feed the life of the city. It's, you know, $1 billion industry for our and supporting our tourism, incredibly important for our economy. And so, you know, when I think about those components of, and it's life therapy, it brings diversity in terms of understanding other people's lived experiences and hearing that in a different form. So I think those are the kinds of benefits that we need to continue to advance and move forward and really understand. I go to, you know, a lot of different, especially as Metro Council, I go to a lot of different forums on, you know, economic development. And one of the things over and over that gets said, and I think is really underappreciated, is how important the quality of life is in our region to really attracting and retaining high quality employees. And if we don't focus on those quality of life factors, we start to lose that Portland brand. We start to lose that quality of life factor. And so there is a true and real economic benefit for supporting our music. I think we need to have a real structure in place that will feed a long-term relationship with the music industry, and absolutely committed to supporting staff that would do that. And but what's the long-term strategy? One of the things that I'm also troubled by is our P5. We have properties that are really in disarray. They're troubled properties. We have financial. Is that my time? I heard a feedback. No, I'm gonna keep going.
You're good. Yeah.
We have those venues. We need a strategic plan for not just those venues, but how is the entire city getting served by venues for our arts, and how are we going to create a sustained structure that will move them forward and support them, that includes the financial needs that are part of our schools and our communities, and making sure people have the opportunity to engage in music, and that supports people being able to and understand where is our new economy going in terms of where do people look to engage in music and hear music, and what kinds of venues are they going to. And so we need to look at that and protect the structures that are in place and identify where do we need more structures. I'm also very concerned about, and so that is something I will start on immediately when I get to city council. And also immediately is this the shorter term, but medium term, I'm very concerned about the COVID.
And now we're actually at your time, Sam. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully we'll get into it a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we will. So question specifically for you. Are you aware of the history and current climate between music communities of color, the Portland Police, and City Hall? How would you address ongoing relations between the PPD and the minority communities' music events? how would you work to rebuild trust between communities of color and city government?
Well, one of my first exposures to this challenge was when I was running Eric Sten's campaign for city council many years ago. He was a friend, and so I helped him by running his campaign, and we had a hip hop event that we were putting forward, and the police canceled it. And it was kind of a shocker to me because I, in my own privilege, did not realize that that was going to happen. I didn't see it coming. And that's absolutely unacceptable. And we need a structure that I think that could be part of a strategic plan, but it's about putting forward and elevating and understanding the challenges that our musicians are facing with the police and making sure that they have a voice. I see that as a fundamental part of how I've approached my work at Metro Council and in other places, because I'm a coalition builder. I'm somebody who really steps back and uses my position, whatever I'm in, to help elevate other people's voices. And so I would really look to bring the voices of folks forward and have that be understood by the entire city council and identify what is the structure. How can we address some of these challenges in the police contracts and not letting them get through the, having arbitrators that are, even though we make a decision, there's an arbitrator that gets to just throw out our decision and move their work forward anyway. So it's absolutely unacceptable. Music is, I kind of went through it when my kids were young, and they're listening to music and it's all different kinds of lyrics and other things. And you just have to embrace it. That is people's lived experience. And my kids love music. It's an everyday part of their lives. They're playing it all the time. I see how it changes their lives in a really positive way. They're hearing other people's lived experiences. We absolutely have to get that music, all music out, and freedom of speech is absolutely critical in this area.
Thank you.
So next up for City Commissioner position 2, we have Aquiles Montas.
Thank you, everybody. Great to see everybody and enjoy this Sunday. But out of this group of candidates, I believe I am the one that you will have more connection with. I am a leader with financial, public, private experience, not only because of education, but also as a former business owner owning the first Caribbean restaurant in Portland, Latin club called La Rumba downtown. So I know exactly the experience and the barriers that local businesses, promoters, musicians run into day to day in the Portland industry city with OLCC, with the police, with the fire marshals. And it's really a shame that we don't have local venues on a regular basis for live music, for musicians to have. As you see right now, for Latin music, the only place that you do have available is Mississippi Pizza. I go over there and support groups, but it's a very small venue. For my band, I'm also a Latin music, and actually I've been called the godfather of Latin music in Portland because I created Latin music. When first people came to see us, oh, here comes the mariachi. I said, no. I actually am from the Dominican Republic and our music is salsa. So I promoted salsa music, merengue, bachata, and I have created not only my own band since 1984, but I have helped create other groups in Portland. I am the one that created Latin DJs. We didn't have those back in the days when we started in '84. I created a dance instructor to teach people how to dance. And one of those reasons that I created that is by going as a volunteer to public schools and teaching kids from elementary to middle to high schools about our music and exposing them to Caribbean music. I also helped create from Portland State a Caribbean festival, Carry Fest, and we were doing it in the park blocks. But because of finance, all those things continue to disappear. It is a shame that you don't have really a black nightclub. I do support Clyde, but it again is very restriction, only at one place to do music. Locally right now in Portland, not even in Portland, place that we are currently playing, it will be at the Alani Casino, because it's a larger and they are paying a fair wage to bands. I used to play so many festivals because of this respect to name. They try to pay you so little, or, you know, oh, could you play for free for the exposures? No. So if you really want somebody that knows exactly the struggles of not only musicians, the restaurant owners, bar owners, and promoters, I am your candidate because I know exactly the struggles, the problems. I do have plenty of ideas how to create and bring back more live music to Portland, especially coming out of this crisis that is going to be really tough for music to come back after all these restrictions. But there's many ways, creative ways to bring and support music. Some of those will be making some concerts that it could be spread at the Memorial Coliseum. That is an amazing building that is not being used by the city, and it should be available for that. The pricing is too high. I had tried to do concerts with the Interstate Firehouse by my house, but again, it's really unreasonable prices. The restrictions, the policies with city, it's amazing. So I will definitely have an office, a liaison person or myself to work with the all music industry musicians, to the unions. I actually belong to MusicPortland, being part of the 99 in the past.
Aquiles, thank you
Yeah,
so much.
that's good.
You've just hit your time. Thank you.
That's good.
Okay, so yes, rising rents have been driving artists in the music businesses from our city long before the pandemic. Would you support something like an enterprise or cultural zone that provides affordable and secure residential or commercial space within an identified area to keep our music economy from moving away? If not, how else would you suggest that we address this challenge?
No, that's a perfect question that is part of my plan. Housing is one of my in my priorities, because when you ask questions, affordable housing, and I ask you, your audience, and I always ask the city officials, what do you consider affordable? To them, it's right now a family of four that is making $89,000 a year. And I said, that's the problem. We need to create some public housing that is actually owned by the county, by the city, that can have housing with, according to your income. You know, I work right now currently with helping low-income families, immigrants, on finding resources, paying for bills. And so that's a daily thing that I encounter every day to supporting these people. But yes, building that needs to be really lower income and spread it within the city. It doesn't have to be all right in the inner downtown, and the destruction of the neighborhoods, demolishing homes. I'm against that.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so we have some questions from our audience, both on Facebook and from the chat here in Zoom. Let's see. One second. All right, Julia. Listening to music and enjoying music are wonderful cultural experiences, but understanding the economic influence that music has is what many people in government overlook. How will you specifically work to support the individuals that make up the community through economics, resources, and specific benefits?
Yes, I think I touched a little bit on this during my my opening, which is that I really support programs that help create, help keep money local. And something that the local music ecology already does is keep money local. It is buy local, for local, even though it benefits from the tourist industry. By and large, the money being spent and made on music performances in Portland stays in Portland. And I love that about this. We don't have to change anything within the structure to make that a reality. What we need to change is how we support people who are existing within that ecosystem, right? So that they're getting paid a living wage, so that they're not being displaced as prices go up, so that they're not being displaced by destruction of their venues, right? We need to like put a lot more resources into at least trying to keep us from losing any more than we've already lost, right? Something that I've been wanting to say since this question was asked earlier, I think of Candace, about the tourism question. I think that's part of the answer when people are talking about how do we stop the displacement of folks as the tourist industry is, you know, has such an influence on the music scene. I think we should really consider funding a lot of these programs to support the music ecology, the local music ecology, by with fees that are associated with tourism, right? Whether it's hotel fees or other fees like high-end dining, the kinds of things that, oh, granted, like restaurants are going to be struggling for a while with the COVID pandemic, so we should maybe go light on that. But I mean, longer term, those are ideas for how to source a more permanent amount of funding, because whatever amount of the music industry that is driven by tourism, we should have like a proportional amount that is being derived from the tourism industry to help sustain and support our local music community. So I hope that answer made sense. It's a little, I'm thinking almost out loud as I answer it, but those are the kinds of solutions I want to explore, is finding the ways of permanently funding better supports for our music community, and making sure that we have everyone said this, I think we're all in agreement, we need to have an office and staffing that actually supports this industry, and one-stop shop for permitting. So like, that's just like,
thank you, Julia.
Minimum. Yes.
Sam, next question's for you. Assuming social distancing might go on for over a year, and that large congregations of humans could be minimized for a long time, how do you all envision and reinvent in our presentation of music and our culture and society that can bridge the diverse needs of humanity where the consumption and exposure to live musical performance is concerned?
Thank you for asking this. I think this is a big concern. And I think, you know, one of my really priorities is to get our economy stimulated and going again as quickly as possible so that we can pay for all the services that we need in the city. Music is part of what gets our economy going. It's what brings people to our region. It's what gets people out of their houses and spending their dollars on, hopefully, on music and on our service sector. So this is an area where I think if we are starting very quickly with a strategic plan, there's the long-term plan that we need to address the music industry's needs long-term and things that have been developed when we had an economy that really didn't have COVID necessarily in mind. Mm-hmm. Now, how do we get up and going as quickly as possible? Can we open up venues that are larger in scope where we can have folks at social distance? Can we open some of our outdoor venues, our parks, our other areas where maybe there have been challenges in getting those access to those, or just bump them up and make them more readily available, create infrastructure that will allow that to happen? How do we, so I think that's an area. Are there things the city can do to help support radio options or even local TV music festivals or other forums? And it's really bringing the industry, because I don't know what the best answers are. But I think we need a plan where we're bringing folks from the industry together to say, here's what we need to do. Let's build that plan. Let's get council on board. Let's get stakeholders on board. And then let's move with light speed on getting that done. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Aquiles, next question is for you. How about the city encouraging and paying for regular outdoor performances in public spaces? How do you feel about that?
Fantastic. I think that's one thing that we have been missing. I remember when I first started coming to Portland back in 1976, we had so many summer concerts in the streets for free. And that was provided by the city. And I see now, the last few years, less and less concerts, especially in the last 2 years, with my band playing at summer concerts in the park, where the last 2 years, after 20 some years of playing every year, now we have not played, even though I have been the first to apply, according to them. Oh, you're the first one to apply, and no money. So that is definitely in my heart that we had to provide a permanent revenue income stream to provide funding to have live music at the parks in the city. And another thing real quick, it's a shame because I had tried to promote music local, not only Latin music, but all the Oregon Zoo. And, they're only considered outdoors. I mean, other bands from other cities. And that's a shame because that's a place perfect to provide that, especially now with this social distancing.
Yeah, thank you. I think we are at time. Thank you, Aquiles. So for anyone just joining us, that was Julia DeGraw, Sam Chase, and Aquiles Montas, running for Portland City Hall Council positions 2. Thank you for your answers. Prior to this, we've heard from Candace, Avalos, Carmen, Rubio, and Tim DuBois. Thank you as well for your answers. A little bit of housekeeping. We appreciate people bringing all forms of discrimination to our attention, and we want to work together to make this content more accessible for everyone. So we will be transcribing this full event, and we are recording as well. Okay. All right, let's move into the next set, Mira. I think you're muted still. There you go.
There we go. Actually, Austin needs to unmute me.
There, you're good to go.
I'm good? All right.
You're good to go.
So our last position is position 4, that includes the incumbent, Commissioner Chloe Udaley, Mingus Maps, and Sam Adams running for that position. So we're going to start off with Commissioner Udaley.
Hello. Good afternoon. Thanks for having us, and thanks for giving us this opportunity to get to know a lot more about each other and hopefully help the voters understand more as well. Thank you for hosting this vital conversation today. My name is Chloe Udaley. I'm running for re-election to Portland City Council position number 4. I'm the former commissioner in charge of the Bureau of Development Services, and I am the current commissioner in charge of the Portland Bureau of Transportation, the Office of Community and Civic Life, and I am your arts commissioner as well. I'm proud to say that I've found ways to support Portland's music community through every assignment my office has received. Although I ran a bookstore for 22 years before taking my seat on City Council, my first love was really music. Family legend is that I started singing before I could talk. Not sure how that works, but that's what they tell me. I sang in choir throughout my school career, played multiple musical instruments, and it is no secret that I love karaoke, and I sometimes burst into song at City Hall. No shame. I've never been in a band, but I was looking forward to achieving a long time dream of being a guest vocalist with Pink Martini this summer at the Vortex Festival. And sadly, it was canceled along with thousands of other arts events across our region. I'm hoping for a rain check. My first live show was General Public at the Starry Night in 1984, RIP Ranking Roger. I have fond memories of venues like Pine Street Theater, Satyricon, Blue Gallery, and La Luna, but my most loved venue was the legendary all-ages club, the X-Ray. My experiences there actually inspired me to open my bookshop. And I saw too many shows to mention last year, but the definite highlight was my second time seeing the Sun Ra Orchestra at the Hollywood Theater. I have been advocating for Portland's arts community for more than 10 years. It started when the Creative Action Network was convening conversations with community stakeholders, which is what led to the well-intentioned but poorly executed arts tax. My message was that Portland's arts community was being forced out of the city, their homes, their rehearsal spaces and studios, and independent performance venues. I asked the city to provide the kinds of grants and technical assistance provided to nonprofit arts organizations, because although for-profit, these creative and often visionary businesses were contributing so much out of pocket to our arts community. I also suggested that the city create commercial land trusts to preserve space for a creative small business community. And as we all know, my recommendations were unheeded, and we've missed so many opportunities to protect and foster our arts community. And now this fragile ecosystem is among the hardest hit in our current public health and economic crisis. So a few of the things, I'm talking fast because I think I have a little too much to say. A few of the things I've done to support Portland's music community since taking office include bringing back the small business concierge at BDS to work with small-time developers and nonprofit and other organizations, make it through a permitting process, which I agree is difficult. I did not support the URM placarding policy after hearing the strong and well-reasoned opposition from the music community. I've worked to improve the relationship between our noise and liquor offices. Those are both in civic life and local venues, which had become a little contentious in the years prior to me taking my seat. And I also helped create Portland's first musician loading zone pilot program with Commissioner Fish, the Transportation Bureau, MusicPortland, and Fair Trade Music PDX. Simply put, this program allows musicians to access free permits to utilize loading zones near music venues for loading in and out, making their jobs easier and keeping them and their gear safer. And I'm looking forward to expanding that once there is a need again. More recently, my office in civic life has been working with local musician and former mayoral candidate Bim Ditson, who's developed a prefab rehearsal space that could solve the challenge, some of the challenge of the lack of affordable rehearsal space by giving people a relatively cheap, easy, and legal way to set up space in their homes. I've also used City Hall itself to celebrate our arts and music community, welcoming thousands of Portlanders through our doors for events from Dead Moon Night to a visiting troupe of Tuvan throat singers. At the outset of this crisis, I advocated for independent contractors and the self-employed to receive unemployment benefits. Senator Wyden delivered those reforms, and this week, enrollment in Oregon began. I'm now actively lobbying at the local, state, and federal level for relief to save our venues. The assistance being offered to small businesses is not only inadequately funded, but it is not what venues and other businesses that depend on large gatherings need to weather this crisis.
Thank you, Commissioner. Unfortunately, we have reached.
Okay.
Okay. So many cities, including Austin, Seattle, King County, New York City, Wichita, and others have already committed part of their city, federal, Corona Relief Fund to provide a monthly life support fund for local independent venues to save their entire music industries from collapse. Oregon's own Independent Venue Coalition has confirmed that $1.6 million per month would keep more than 40 Portland venues from extinction, and leave us with the music ecology to rebuild. Would you support such a fund for Portland music venues until they are permitted to reopen? I don't know if you noticed, I'm currently sitting in a Portland music venue. I'm at Alto Lounge here.
Nice. Aw, it's been a long time.
Courtesy of the
I didn't
green
think
screen.
that was your living room.
No, this is courtesy of the green screen. I'm actually at X-Ray. So.
Oh. Yeah, I absolutely support that. And I am definitely looking to other cities for inspiration and ammunition for building that support among my colleagues, as well as our leaders at the state and federal level. I'm very concerned for what our music industry looks like coming out of this crisis. Besides venues and musicians, there are a host of business, kind of invisible jobs and businesses, from people that make gear to the people that manage stages. I mean, it's, as you said earlier, tens of thousands of jobs and millions of dollars in economic activity. I always feel crass talking about numbers when it comes to the arts, though, because the arts are just essential to being human. So let me think. Yes, the conversation about how our federal relief dollars has not begun in earnest, but I will be advocating for support for our venues anywhere I can find it.
Thank you. Amira, you're still muted.
Me. It's awesome.
There you go.
There we go. So next up, we have Mingus Maps, who is also running for City Commissioner position 4.
Hi, folks. Can you hear me? And am I on camera?
Yes.
Yes.
All of the
Okay,
above.
great. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for organizing this event. It's actually been a ton of fun to hear everyone's stories about their relationship to the arts. As you heard, I'm a candidate for City Council position number 4. Especially for this group, I want to address the elephant in the room, which I'm sure everyone is wondering about right now, which is the origins of my name. Where did Mingus come from? And I was named after Charles Mingus, the jazz musician. And something a lot of you probably guessed that, a lot of you probably don't know, but I named both of my children after musicians. I have one kid with the first name Coltrane and a second kid with the middle name Dizzy. And that should probably answer the second question that I'm sure most of you have, which is, is music important to me? Yes, music is enormously important to me. It's literally part of my identity and part of the legacy that I've handed down to my kids, and part of what I hope to bring and celebrate when I am on City Council. Let me take a minute to introduce myself. As you heard already, I'm a dad. I got 2 kids in elementary school. I'm also a Portlander with deep roots in our city. I did my undergraduate work at Reed College and then went on to get a PhD in government from Cornell University. I've split my career between being an academic and being a public servant here in Portland. Let me talk a little bit about my academic work. I'm a political scientist by training. My research and teaching focuses in on issues around urban politics and public policy, especially urban politics and inequality. And I also have a deep career working at local government here in Portland. So I have helped manage the city's neighborhood association system. I've helped manage the city's crime prevention program. Back when Bev Stein was Multnomah County Chair, I worked in her office, and I have also worked for Portland Public Schools in their intergovernmental relations office. All of those experiences taught me a lot about how local government in Portland works, and taught me a little bit about why local government in Portland doesn't work as well as it could. And it's also taught me something about the arts. I have a long history of bringing and promoting arts to Portland. I used to be executive director for Historic Park Roads, which is a nonprofit group dedicated to promoting equitable economic development east of 82nd. One of my strategies for promoting development in East Portland was to celebrate and bring arts to that community. That's why I helped organize and turn our little street fair, Taste of Park Roads, into a major community celebration, which attracts thousands of people a year and generates tens of thousands of dollars in revenue for the Park Roads neighborhood. And I've also served on the board of directors for the Jim Pepper Native Arts Festival. Those folks help organize a music festival featuring Native American musicians every year. I think it's really important and really neat because Jim Pepper, who's a famous jazz musician in his own right, used to live in Park Rose. A lot of people don't realize that, but that's a real important piece of Portland history that means a lot to me, and I kind of want to celebrate. I also want to tell you the arts play an important role in my own life. As I mentioned, I named both of my kids after musicians, and part of that is to literally give them a curriculum in the arts education. I want them to listen to Coltrane and Dizzy Gillespie through their whole life, and that will pay them back. I also send my kids to Buckman Elementary School because Buckman is an arts magnet program, and I did that because I want my little kids to have a training in music and dance and the performing arts, and that's been a wonderful experience for us. And yes, like a lot of my colleagues, I play an instrument too. I play alto sax. I picked it up in middle school, played it regularly through high school. I was never very good, but I still have the alto sax in the closet. We break it out every once in a while and play with the kids, and that's a great experience too. I'm a regular consumer of live music. You heard before that I have my kids in arts in an arts magnet school, so I go to a lot of school performances, which are really special. I also I like to go to music venues in my own neighborhood. I'm sort of an aficionado of old bands, so on Sunday afternoons like this, you might find me at the Laurel Thirst, listening to some local bands over lunch. And some evenings, you can find me at the Blue Diamond, listening to some of our local musicians there. I live just a couple of blocks away from Revolution Hall, so whenever there's a music event there that I can afford and get a babysitter for, I'll be there. And at least once a month, I try to buy tickets to a live performing arts event, both so I can support the performing arts and also so I can kind of nurture my own soul. I'm a single dad and I don't get to get out very often, but I think it's important just for me to be a complete human being to actually go out and consume arts. Now, arts matter to me for a bunch of different reasons. One is it promotes our economy, and two, it promotes our culture. I have a lot more to say, but I see I've already gone over my 5 minutes, so I'm going to shut it down now. You're on mute.
I am on mute. I've been policing Mira left and right, and here I am muting and just running my mouth. Thank you, Mingus.
You're welcome.
Okay, Portland's private sector is confirmed as relying heavily on our local music scene to attract and retain talent, and for that reason, a significant influence on decisions to locate businesses in Portland. How would you engage local businesses to invest in local music that directly benefits them? As city commissioner, what role would you be willing to play to make that happen?
Oh gosh, I totally get this question. The arts and music in particular is a huge economic draw for our state. Literally more than $300 million in economic activities generated by arts and the music. Tens of millions of dollars in tax dollars are generated by the arts, and more than 10,000 jobs come from the arts. I think it's really important that government play a role in promoting this. This is, as I think I've mentioned before, I think part of Portland's secret sauce is our livability, our quality of life. People come here both to make and do incredible things, but also to literally celebrate the quality of life. We need to sustain that. I will be an advocate for that. That's why I really believe in strong neighborhoods. One of the other things I want to do is to make sure that every neighborhood has a voice in City Hall. So I want to elect members of City Council by neighborhood-based electoral districts. That way, the unique cultural needs of every corner of our city can be represented in policymaking that comes out of City Hall.
All right, thank you. Mira, turn it back over to you.
All right, excellent. Our next candidate is former Mayor Sam Adams, running for position number 4 on City Council.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to participate in this forum. It's so thrilling to see MusicPortland, the advocacy, the support for musicians, the bringing together all aspects of the live music and music culture, as you mentioned, not only musicians, but also manufacturers. We mentioned venue owners, the labels, recording labels. And I think it's important to note, as you've talked about, Mira, in the past, is that our music scene here is disproportionately live. And while places like Nashville might have big recording industries, we have some of that too. But our musicians rely on live music. And so they are absolutely, both musicians and venues are being slammed right now. The fact that the state unemployment office mangled the benefits process for gig workers like musicians, and that people have waited for weeks and weeks and weeks, has been very painful for those affected. And MusicPortland has been right there advocating for that to be addressed in as timely manner as possible. And so I want to congratulate you on that. It's something that, from my little bully pulpit on social media and reaching out to the employment department and reaching out to elected local state legislators and state senators to weigh in on this issue with the department and with the governor. We've gotten some progress, but there's more work to be done. But thank you, MusicPortland, for that really important, real-time advocacy. The issue of venues, I also want to do a shout out to Jim Bromberg, Revolution Hall, Mississippi Studios, who was one of the co-creators of a new national organization called National Independent Venues Association. That work as well is so very important. Calling for changes in the so-called Paycheck Protection Act. For restaurants, it doesn't work. For performance venues, it clearly doesn't work. To think that you could get a loan as a performance venue and be up and operating in 8 weeks is just provably, demonstrably dumb. It's not going to happen. And so we need more flexibility. We have representatives in the area, in the Senate and in the House, that are in key places in Congress. And we all need to continue to reach out to them to put more muscle behind this, in addition to the individual outreach that some of us are taking on this issue. I really call on the City Council to pass a resolution on the issue of making changes in federal assistance that are more beneficial, more accessible, more realistic for venues. If that resolution was passed, then the full lobbying muscle of the city would get behind it. And Portland has full-time paid lobbyists in Washington, D.C. And that City Council resolution would also make this stand out from all of the other impacts of COVID-19. In terms of my work on, so that's sort of short term. On the longer term, I was arts commissioner for 8 years. We did Act for Art, which was the city's first arts and culture strategy, and I think it was 16 years. Included a lot of help. I had great colleagues with Jennifer Yoakum, later Carrie Clark, Jeff Hawthorne from RAC. It included a lot of input. But I think they and I would be the first to admit, as you sort of spoke to earlier, Mira, because there wasn't an organization as robust as MusicPortland, I think that the local music concerns and opportunities were not necessarily included in that. We tried, we did a lot of outreach, but there is no substitute for having an organization like MusicPortland. it's time for a new Act for Art. It's time for a new strategy for the city of Portland. Part of what we did in the 8 years was to increase funding for the arts, general fund funding, including we doubled the Percent for Art program for the city. We increased, we put on the table a match for workplace giving for arts and culture. We funded the Right Brain Initiative. We worked to create with hardly any city money, Milepost 5, which was a performance and living space, live work space on 82nd Avenue. And we worked with East Portlanders to put the first neighborhood arts strategy together for East Portland. And we spent—
Sorry, Sam, we've reached your time. Sorry.
And I look forward to answering your questions.
Good. Okay. Given that some estimates sustainable live performance income may be unavailable to artists until 2021 and slow to rebuild, what creative ideas might you have to explore to create funded opportunities for musicians that provide civic value to Portland? Think Works Progress Administration, or WPA, or the Federal Music Program of the Great Depression.
Absolutely. And, everything from Listen Local, which we initiated with the city's Hold Music. This was put together by staff member Carrie Clark, who, instead of paying for Muzak, we had local bands on the Hold Music. And we worked to get other governments to also have local music and announce who the players are. So I think that sort of more people need to not only know that live music exists, but get to know the musicians, get to know, who they are as a person. That will only help sort of create the army of crusaders we need to get more funding for musicians. I think the city, this is an indirect, but I think the city should prioritize meeting space, to rent meeting space at the existing venues. Those meetings are usually during the day. That will help the venues with some cash flow, and then look to recruit other businesses and other governments to do that as well, as opposed to paying a hotel for a room or something like that. I think that the other way is that the city can help is by hiring musicians. When I started first Thursdays at City Hall, and almost every Thursday, every month we had a new art showing, and then we also had musicians there. And I encouraged them and we have lots of people every month come in, and I encouraged musicians to obviously sell themselves regularly during songs, to talk about who they are and they're available, and also to sell their items. The other thing, it's a little further afield, and I don't know how to go about it exactly, but I would reach out to Spotify and to Pandora and the other massive mega streaming platforms and ask them to create a local channel that we in turn can all market and build a sort of, would help with, and any revenues that come from that can go back to the artist. And MusicPortland can help promote that as well.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to go and take a look at some of the questions we have from people in the chat on Zoom and also on Facebook. Commissioner Udaley, you're up first. What would you do to create a valid urban voice for music support in City Hall, hip-hop community specifically?
To create a valid?
Yes.
Is that, okay.
The question was a valid urban voice.
Well, my office has been involved in the annual hip hop day proclamation and performances. Mm-hmm. I referred to some work I did with the Noise and Liquor Office in civic life. And what I was referring to were challenges that the community, especially hip hop venues or venues that ever hosted hip hop, were having with the city. Gosh, I don't, I mean, I celebrate and support all forms of art. I don't have a specific hip hop plan. I'm a fan of a lot of hip hop musicians, and I think just, you know, my focus as commissioner has been serving underrepresented and unheard communities, and I'm really committed to equity and inclusion, and I've shown that through all of my work, which involves working deeply with hand in hand with community to develop policies that address the unique needs and challenges of specific communities. So while I do not have a hip hop plan in place today, I would certainly bring that same commitment to understanding and co-developing programs, policies, projects with the community.
Thank you. Up next, Mingus. Will you work to declare Portland a music city and fund groups like MusicPortland to conduct research into what policy is needed and to suggest a bespoke package of policies to suit Portland music?
Oh my gosh, yes. And I'm not only will I do that, I'm excited about doing that. I think one of the challenges of this age will be to try to figure out how our tourism and arts economies work in an age of COVID. This is going to require deep cooperation between the music industry and policymakers. One of the things that I've learned over the course of the discussions that I've been having with Portland Music is that musicians and the music industry face unique challenges which are distinct from some of the other performing arts. So I want you folks at the table. We're going to have to reinvent things like how you do performances in an age of social distancing. How do you pencil out like operating a big venue when you lose half of your seats or at least half of your capacity? You know, it's going to be a challenge. And frankly, I won't lie to you, I don't think anyone knows how to navigate this. This is unlike anything we've seen before. But what I can promise you is that I'll be a creative, constructive, engaged policymaker who's there to partner with you. I recognize that arts are key to the quality of life in Portland. And Portland without the arts and Portland without music is not a Portland I want, and it's not a Portland that we can endure. But the other thing I want to say is that, you know, I'm a little bit of an urban historian, and the arts have always been the leaders when our cities go into economic crisis. So even though I know it looks hard today, trust me, folks, things will get better, especially if we work together and help the arts lead the way.
Thank you. Thank you, Mingus. Sam, in many other cities, incursion of corporate entertainment corporations have been devastating to indigenous and independent venues. I'd love to know your thoughts regarding the intrusion of corporate entertainment, Live Nation into our city, and how they will fight for local businesses to firstly survive, but also thrive with the impending presence of Live Nation trying to force its way into our community. That's directly from Facebook.
Well, I'm going to riff off your previous questions about designating a cultural district. I think for a portion of the 26 venues that we have in the city that offer live music, might be more, might be less, depending on how you count them. Enter into conversations with them about their existence being designated as a citywide, as a venue of citywide cultural significance. And with that come, I'm about how to get things done, not just what needs to get done. So 2 funding ideas for that. One is the city doesn't put into the general fund the business license fees that are collected on tickets and the profits from that venue, but goes into a fund to help the live music industry in general, and that collection of venues in general. Could be funding support for MusicPortland. And then you also have the city also collects property taxes, a portion of the property taxes on those venues as well. In a sort of public-private agreement, while maintaining private ownership, those incentives I would focus on local ownership to the degree that the law allows. And I would focus any sort of property tax sort of incentives. There's legal issues involved, but the idea that we have a diversity of different kinds of venues that host different kinds of music, and that they be all around the city. It helps to strengthen neighborhood main streets. As you know, the study in Chicago showed that for every dollar that's spent at a music venue, an additional $12 are spent there or immediately around it. I also think that in terms of preserving in the increasingly sort of dense city, when a venue like that, a music venue like that is designated, then any new building around it, whether it's for rent, whether it's for sale, whether it's commercial, office, whatever, part of that transaction has to be, and part of the marketing has to be disclosure that they're moving in next to a music venue.
Okay.
And they have to agree with certain times of day where loud music gets to be played. And that helps prevent later on when everybody's surprised that there's music, loud music being played during certain times. Part of the resources.
I'm sorry, we kind of have to. We're nearing the end of we're nearing the end of our time. But thank you so much.
Yeah.
For anyone that just tuned in, that was Commissioner Chloe Daly, Mingus Maps, and Sam Adams, all running for Portland City Council position 4. Thank you all for your answers. Thank you all for your time. Mira, I turn it back over to you.
All right. Am I audible?
You are
Right.
audible.
I am so just giddy hearing all of you amazing, aspiring, or current public servants talk about our music ecology in a way that I think is long overdue. It is heartening to hear how much each of you brings to it personally and how much creative thinking you're already applying to this when for some of you it was a brand new topic. So I personally cannot tell you how meaningful this conversation has been. We will be posting all of these so people with transcripts, so people will be able to go back and review these, keep your bingo scorecard of, different things that different people are supportive of, be an informed voter. I would like to close on a question that's been kind of noodling over in the chat, but I'd like for all of the candidates that remain, I would like to know what is the soundtrack song for your campaign? Pick one song and say that why it's your campaign song.
I'll go. The Magnificent Seven by The Clash, because I just love the way it sounds. I'm not sure that all the lyrics are necessarily, campaign oriented or appropriate. But boy, it's hard to find a better piece of music from a pop band.
Cool.
Can I go?
Sure.
This is actually a question I get a lot and have had to think about. And at this point, when someone asks us what our campaign song is, I tell them we're a John Prine album.
Oh, there you go. I love it. Carmen, what have you got?
Sorry about that. I think right now I'm listening to a whole long 90s playlist, but the one that I have been using recently as I prep for forums and think about what we want to do and how we want to re-enter after this COVID is Katy Perry, and specifically Roar.
Excellent. Going across, we got Julia. What's your song?
I'm going to have to go with Girl on Fire by Alicia Keys, just because every time I hear that song, I get super energized and feel really powerful and ready to just take it on,
I like it. Chloe, what's your theme song?
I've got a few campaign playlists, but for the song, I'm gonna have to pick People Have the Power by Patti Smith.
Well done. Sam Chase.
Well, this one's maybe my own personal theme in my head, but I've been really trying to enjoy new music a lot lately and have been. And Khruangbin is a band out of Houston that I've really been enjoying lately, and they have a song, Maria Tambien, and it's all instrumental, and it's really just kind of centers me, and it's just absolutely fantastic. I recommend listening to it, Maria Tambien.
Nice, excellent. Aquiles. Oh,
There we go. Eye of a tiger. So for instead of eye, heart of the tiger. So we can make a difference. And in Spanish, there's a Spanish song called Viva la Música, like long live music. Great song.
Nice.
that could be our theme song. I like that. All right, Candace.
Well, I did say it in the chat, but last year when I was preparing to run and I was doing the Emerge Oregon program, I was training to run for office. And I was just thinking about, you know, how young voices need to be heard in City Hall. And with 4 out of 5 of those seats being open, we can't afford to have a voice of a generation that I feel has been left behind by the economy and left out of the conversation. And so I felt that Lizzo really represented that for me. You know, not only does she look like me, and you know what? I love representation, right? It's about damn time that we have a singer that talks about body positivity and caring about your confidence and building that. And so I really I went in on Lizzo, and she's on my Black Tina Vibes Spotify list. And Like a Girl starts with, woke up feeling like I just might run for president. And I was like, yep, that's my song.
Excellent. Let's see, who have we missed here? Anybody else online that we have not asked? I know some folks have dropped off. Well, look, we are actually coming in on time, which is amazing. Many music shows don't, you know, but this one we've nailed it. And again, I cannot thank you all enough. I am heartened and encouraged about the future of our Music City, given this this rack of candidates. So stay engaged. People that are listening, make sure that you engage with these candidates. If there's one that you really like, reach out to them and tell them how much you love them. Get involved in their campaign. This is about participating in democracy. And that's how we create great government, by voters showing up and by having great candidates. So I thank you all. We're going to get through this together. And thanks for loving music. Farewell all.